Hi, Leanne Donoghue-Tamplin here. Today I interviewed Sharyn Donoghue-Tamplin, my sister, and she's a high school teacher, and she's going to talk about her the adversities she's overcome, one in particular, and how she got through it, the toughest thing she got through in her life. And I wanted to let you know, just a bit of a heads up, that she and I sound a lot alike, so you might need to be looking at the screen so you know who is speaking at what time. I have heard that from other people before. And also a number of her pets were around her throughout the interview, and at times they wanted to be heard as well. So, I hope you're okay to listen to the animals talking as much as my sister. And thanks, and I'll give you some more information back here again soon.
So can you tell me a bit about what obstacle or challenges were the toughest things for you to get through?
The toughest obstacle in my life would have been when my husband issued papers to have total custody of my children.
Right, okay. All right. So was it a surprise for you to get that information?
Absolutely was a surprise, because we had been going through some counselling sessions talking about me moving to Queensland and how we could work out the custody agreements, and we were with a counsellor going through all of that, and the counsellor and I felt that we'd come to an agreement, and so I left the office of the counsellor and the next day resigned from my job. I gave notice to the real estate agent that I was moving. I started looking to buy a property up in Queensland, because that was one of the reasons that we were moving, was because I could not afford to purchase anything in Sydney. And also one of the reasons was that during those counselling sessions prior to the negotiating happening, the counsellor had said to me that it would be wise to move the children away.
Right.
That things had not gone well when he had remarried, and his new wife was very young, and it was having a detrimental impact on my children, and I needed to get them away.
And then he, instead of agreeing to it, filed for custody.
I got a phone call. I was at work, and I got a phone call from my lawyer to say that he had some bad news for me, and he read out the paperwork which said that he wanted the total
100%
custody of the children. And I am a teacher, and I was beside myself, sobbing.
Yeah.
And I had to go and teach a lesson. So other teachers had to go and cover that lesson for me, because I wasn't capable of thinking. It was totally a shock.
And so the kind of the process of that was that you found that out. Yep. And then you had to put all of those plans you had in place on hold. Is that right?
Correct. I had to ring back the real estate agent. I had to not resign from my job.
So you couldn't leave until that was sorted.
He was basically saying that if I was leaving, I was leaving on my own. Happened. He wanted the children to stay with him.
And so how long? So from the time you found that out to when it was all resolved, how long a period of time was that? Was it a year? Was it 6 months? Was it?
My brother passed away. Our brother passed away, and in March, and about 2 weeks after that process, I got the phone call from the lawyer. Right. So I had not even got past the grieving for my brother, and so it was multiplied. The grief was multiplied.
I agree.
It took, we actually did win the battle, and we came to Queensland on the 22nd of December.
Right.
So it took all the way from March until December.
So almost 9 months.
Correct.
Close to 9 months.
Correct. For the process, once we got up here, it took me a long time to feel like I was free.
Yeah.
So,
but the process of
process.
that issue of custody being resolved, sorted, and now you can move.
That's correct.
The whole 9 months.
Yeah.
So during that 9 months period, and can I also, just to clarify, that process involved, paperwork, organising, solicitor, negotiating, affidavits, and then the actual court case. Yeah. And then, going back and finding out a final resolution.
Yeah. That's correct.
And then planning again for the trip again. So then leaving your job again, starting all over again. Yeah. So a 9 months process that involved a whole lot of different steps and stages.
Sure did.
Yeah. And the whole time, because right from that beginning point when you were so overwhelmed, is that feeling you were describing.
Yes.
And kind of in shock.
Yes.
So the whole time you're highly stressed, kind of still got to work,
Shock for 9 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was very, very hard because I had to keep working.
Yeah. And looking after the kids.
And absolutely. And allowing visitation and actually encouraging visitation because the kids didn't want to go.
Yeah.
But lawyers were telling me if I did not encourage them or get them to go, I had to get them to go
visit with their father.
It would look poorly in the courtroom when we came to court. So it was, I remember going to the doctor's office one morning instead of going to work, dropping the kids off and then going straight to the doctor's office and just sitting there and sobbing and saying to him, I don't think I can do this. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. And so he was able to give me some antidepressants at the time, and that helped me greatly. And whatever he said to me, which I can't tell you what he said because I can't remember, he said to me, made me stand up and say, I'm not going to give in. Yeah. I'm going to fight.
So interesting, because that's actually my question was, did you ever want to give up or feel it was impossible to keep going?
Oh, most certainly. And that one particular day I remember quite vividly. It's a vivid memory, sitting there in the doctor's office saying, I can't get up. I can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
And that was the total stress. And when I explained the situation to him, he was kind of gobsmacked and said, "You're doing really well.
Yeah.
Keep going."
Yeah. And so, because the next part of that question is, how did you keep going? And what you're saying is, you reached out initially. So when you got to the point of the brick wall, you actually reached out and got some help from someone.
Well, I knew I wasn't coping.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't coping, and I couldn't not cope.
Yes.
We had
to keep going.
2 children on the line here that needed me to not falter. So I had to get up, dust myself off and go again and keep fighting. And
put your big girl panties on, as they say.
Correct. Put my I think over the process, I can look back now at the process and see the dramatic changes that happened with me. I was a woman that before going to those counselling sessions, those initial counselling sessions with my ex-husband, I couldn't talk. And I would speak with you, Leanne, before I went. And you would help me because you'd type up the things I needed to say.
Yeah.
And so we would guess what he was going to argue. And I'd go in with a typed up sheet. And so when he'd say them, I would, instead of just going quiet and saying yes, which is what I actually would do, I would look down at that sheet and I'd actually talk from that sheet because these are the things I needed to say. Yeah. And I had learnt in the marriage just not to say them. I know I'm making him sound like a monster.
He'll never see this, don't worry.
he had grown up in a terrible environment in which he had been abused and manipulated. And so this was, it was a common, his control was a common thing for him.
Do you know what, can I add as well that I think for a lot of women, the stress of those situations when you're put on the spot, and it's not everyone, but for a lot of women, that makes it, like, a lot of women talk about the court case.
Yeah.
And how hard it is to, you know, they're so terrified, like in a variety of different situations, of being up there on the stand because they're not sure if they can adequately answer the questions that they're asked and if it will accurately reflect what their experience was.
Correct.
And it's not necessarily because the perpetrator or whoever the assailant is in the room. It's just because of the environment. It's so stressful that it's hard to get their thoughts clear.
And it's all men. The judge is a man. My lawyer, my barrister's a man. His barrister's a man. So we had barristers, not lawyers. We had lawyers and barristers there. It was a full-on sit on the stand and be interviewed. Yeah, I'd been prepped, so you know, he'd told me what to say. Yep. In the judge's remarks, when you read them back later, which obviously have filed away somewhere in the cupboard. But in the judge's remarks, he kind of talked about me and said that I was very stoic, so saying that I was, you know, very composed and not emotional, and and that was because that was the role I was playing. Yes. In actual fact, I was absolutely terrified, and the most important thing in my whole life was at stake. If I'd lost the kids, I think I would have lost me. Yeah. And quite frankly, if I really, it made me stop and think, are the kids better off with him? Because he was in a married situation, you know, with a new wife, and his new wife pregnant, and having, actually, by the time that she'd already had at least one child, actually she'd had two by this time. So they had two other children. So I had to think about, is that the better environment for my children? But the number of times that my children rang me from their place when they were there were far out. Every time they rang, I'd have to come and pick them up. And they were not comfortable there. They would come home and it would take quite some time for us to get it out of their system, and they could come back to the balance that they were experiencing at home. And
so I think what you're saying is when you doubted yourself and questioned your convictions,
correct,
you know, and
I most definitely did.
You would pay attention to the evidence in front of you. So what I would call in psychology terms, you reality checked those thoughts. Yeah. And went, wait a minute, are they actually better off with him, or maybe I'm just, you know, struggling.
Yes.
And the truth is,
if they were going to be better off with him, then it was me standing in their way. Yeah. Whereas the whole thing of me moving to Queensland had been because he had been standing in their way. Yeah. And so it made, you know, the whole getting the court orders and everything made me stop.
Yes, and have to reflect on that.
Yeah, I am uprooting them from everything they knew, taking them to a different state, which is like a different country. Yeah. They have to start all over again. No friends. And I'm walking away from all my support network, totally walking away. So it was a dire decision that, you know, I felt, and retrospectively, I can look back and say it was the right decision. Yeah. But at the time, you don't know whether you are making the right decision.
I think what's an interesting point, you're actually answering a lot of the questions I would have asked you anyway, but
Okay.
there's an interesting point you've made there where it was a huge decision and you weren't, you can't, decisions aren't 100%.
No.
Right? They're a bit fuzzy. And if they were 100% certain, they're very easy to make.
Yes.
So you're having to choose between what seems like the best possible scenario.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
actually say in the research that one of the things when people are going through adversity, one of the things that helps them is the ability to make a good enough decision and then follow it through.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting for perfection.
Yeah.
Because if you sit there going, it's not quite perfect, then,
No, absolutely.
then nothing happens. You just stay kind of stuck.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
And obviously you've got to, get to the balances of it being, this is the best of the scenarios situation.
Correct.
But yeah, it's never going to be 100%. And that means there's room for you to doubt yourself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm just going to take a bit of an intermission here in this interview because I want to review some of the things that have been covered so far. There's so much great information coming out in the interview. I just want to make sure you're able to pull out those pieces and use them yourself. So firstly, some of the things Sharyn described are going on for her or went on for her during that trauma that she went through of the custody battle. There were a lot of emotions, a lot of thoughts, a lot of behaviours and things going on, and I just want to highlight those for you. So I've got a list in front of me and I might refer to that from time to time. So she talked about feeling overwhelmed and shocked through most of that whole 9-month period. She said there were times when she was barely functioning, that she felt powerless, and she doubted herself a lot of the time. She found it hard to speak when she was talking to her ex-husband because there was inequity in the relationship and it made it difficult for her to connect with her own thoughts and feelings and share them. She also said there were many times when she didn't feel she could continue, that she had to keep staying in it and keep pushing herself through on numerous occasions. Some of the things she did to the strategies she used to push through were to, when things really hit a wall, she reached out and went and saw her general practitioner. And she felt during that appointment with the general practitioner that she was listened to and understood and reassured. And also then she was encouraged to take antidepressants to manage what she was dealing with. And it wasn't an easy choice for her to make, it didn't sound like, but at the same time, it was a really good one to make. She also was using some encouraging statements to herself, like, I can do this, I've got this, we can push through this, and just reassuring herself a lot of the time whenever she could. And whenever she doubted herself, she went through a process of reality checking that. So she had the doubt, and again, instead of being stuck in that, she instead looked at, wait a minute, is that the reality of this situation? No, I think I am doing the right thing. I think this is better for the kids. I am doing a better job with them. These are things that affirmed again for her that her decision making was accurate. There was one really key thing, I think, that came up in this first half of the interview, which was about decisions not being at 100% certain. And that's frequently the case for people when they're going through any kind of adversity or generally in life. It's often difficult to find a very obvious 100% certain decision. One of the things that the research is pushing or finding a lot of is that people who get through adversity and trauma the most successfully frequently make good enough decisions and then follow through with those. And it's easy, given you're feeling doubtful about yourself, you're feeling rattled, it can be easy to, not believe in your decision-making ability and therefore not go through with a decision if it doesn't feel 100%. So it's great if you can go, this one's good enough on the balance of it. It looks like the best possible decision I can make at this time, and I'm going to follow through with that. That seems to give people the best possible outcomes. All right, so I hope that's just highlighted a few key issues that have come up, and I enjoy the second half of the interview.